Start with a poem called All Hallows by Louise Gluck. Oh, there's a word in here I had to look up. It's called cinquefoil. It's a little yellow flower, in case you know that. The arborists and the botanists in the room know that one. Even now, this landscape is assembling. The hills darken. The oxen sleep in their blue yoke. The fields having been picked clean. The sheaves bound evenly and piled at the roadside among cinquefoil as the toothed moon rises. This is the barrenness of harvest or pestilence, and the wife leaning out the window with her hand extended as in payment, and the seeds distinct gold calling, come here, little one, and the soul creeps out of the tree. Little darkness there. The title is The Gifts from the Goblins. Goblins, I'm talking about the little people of the imagination. All these reports, many reports from all corners of the globe. Nature spirits, fairies, leprechauns, pixies, menehune, that's from Hawaii. Devas, that's from India. Brownies, elves, gremlins, imps, sprites, all kinds of different characters, little characters that show up in dreams, that dart about just at the edge of your peripheral vision, and then they're gone when you look. But were they there? Now, the fairies had better PR, so they come off a little more positively in some of the stories, although they can be pretty wicked. The goblins, trolls, they don't come off as well. So we're over in that darker territory for today. There are Native American variations. Each tribal group, each nation seemed to have a variation of the appearance and the name and the activities and the trouble caused by little ones, little nature spirits. African stories as well. There are a whole series that are mining spirits, about those who go down in the tunnels, down in the caves, to find something valuable, something like coal to heat with, but more often something of a treasure, a valuable metal or a jewel or something. Remember the dwarves in Snow White? Hi ho, it's off to work we go. Yeah, they were going down to mine gems. So this work of descending into the dark place can bring treasures. Trolls, gnomes, the oni from Japan. In fiction, we have the hobbits, the more positive version, the orcs, the darker side, their cousins, they have battle with them. Now in psychological language, in a psychoanalytic view of this kind of thing, this would be the return of the repressed. What have we pushed out of our consciousness? What do we not own or identify with? What do we deny in reality? That'll come back and bite us at some point, because it will not be excluded. It's still part of reality. It'll go maybe underground someplace. Is that the unconscious? So I made a little list. The gifts from the goblins include chaos, uncertainty, humility, intuition, ambiguity. Now, some of those have a little attractiveness. A lot of them seem a little spooky. Is ambiguity a good thing? Yeah. Yeah, if you're a scientist, if you're a scholar, if you're a creative artist, you want to go to the place where things are kind of fuzzy, where you can't quite nail it down. You can't hold it in consciousness, because from that place something new can come. A new insight, a new theory, a new combination. So this is contact beyond ordinary knowing, even in fiction. Now, we could say that these characters are all mythic. They're just folklore. They're for children, aren't they? Well, they were not children's stories in their time. We tell them that way now because we marginalize them in imagination and say, well, that's just child play. But we need to know how to play if we're going to be all we can be. They're still about something real, whether they are real in a tangible sense or not. They're about our experience somehow. We, that is humanity, has come up with similar stories, apparently unconnected, all over the planet. Why? Well, I've got a story. This is the great goblin story from the Victorian ages. It's called The Princess and the Goblins. It's by George MacDonald, published in 1872. He was very influential in the work of J.M. Barrie, who came up with Peter Pan, which is essentially a fairy story. C.S. Lewis praised MacDonald, a lot of influence. Tolkien's influence is pretty direct. So here's this story that hovers behind those more familiar tales. Our story starts in a castle. It isn't the biggest castle in the land, but it's a pretty impressive big house. It's on the side of a mountain. The main castle is down below, but our heroine, Irene, a princess, doesn't live in the main castle because there's been trouble. We start in sadness. Her mother died not long after giving birth to her, and her father, for safekeeping, has put her in this other castle, this big house over by the mountain. The situation is significant. It is close to the mountain. It is close to the margins of town is down in the valley where the farmers are. This is closer to the edge of things. Pretty house, pretty big castle. It's got a tower or two, and she has a nursemaid. The father is out being the king a lot. He has things to do, affairs of state. He's always riding off with his men and guard and all that kind of thing. Little does Irene know that that mountain is full of goblins. There are all kinds of mines, and their goblins in this story are from the mining spirits. They go down below. They are the things that come and say things to you in the middle of the night when you're only just a little bit awake. And if you're a person like me who keeps track of your dreams, you're reaching for a pen or something to try to write it down. Then you look in the morning, and sometimes you got something, and sometimes you got to scribble. So I sometimes will actually pick up my phone and dictate because it's easier. A couple of nights ago, I was a little pretty tired, and I was sort of groggy. I wanted to try to catch the dream, and then I looked at it in the morning. Clearly, I had gone to sleep while dictating because I was all this nonsense. Anyway, I was sort of fascinating, and now I have to interpret that. Okay. There is a nursemaid named Luti. So on a rainy day, our mischievous little Irene, she's curious like a Unitarian Universalist, wants to know things. And she has come across a secret panel and a secret door. Castle's not any good if you don't have a secret passageway to someplace. And she starts going up a staircase that she did not know was there to a part of the house she has never been in before. Now, from the outside, you can see there's towers and things. She'd never known there was any way to get up there. And she gets up there and comes across somebody who has lived there apparently forever, who introduces herself, her great, or is it great? Anyway, this is great-great-grandmother. This is a long, old person. This person is a couple hundred years old. Has she been up here all the time? Is she real? Well, now, I think Irene was napping. So is this just a dream, staircase and all? And that ambiguity is of some importance in these stories. We don't know if we're onto something real, something that's just nonsense, or something that's somewhere in between and might be real in some mysterious way. Strangely, the grandmother explains that she's her great-great-grandmother and that her name is Irene also. So is there some kind of mirroring? And even though she is old with long, very beautiful white hair, her face is quite youthful. I was telling Anne part of this story, and Anne says, clearly she had some work done. Well, that's more Californian than this story would be, but she has that combination of the sage and the youthful imagination. The next day, there's a little outing. Luti is happy that the rain has stopped, and the two of them go out for a picnic or something, and they hear strange noises that seem to be coming from inside the mountain, and they are terrified, and they run for it, and there's shadows that seem to be running after them, and they are terrified, and along comes a young miner singing a song, and the shadows disappear, and he introduces himself. His name is Curdy. And the reason he sings is he knows that the goblins hate music. That's why we have Kevin, to keep the goblins away, although today's music kind of evoked them a little bit. At any rate, he says they don't like rhyme or music. Interesting, that the act of creativity, joyful creativity, the act of putting words together, or putting music together, that scares the dark side away. Well, they are very grateful for having been rescued, and he tells them some more about the goblins. He only sees the goblins occasionally, but sometimes when he's mining with his father and the other miners, they get to a place where it's very thin. The goblins mine at night, and if they work late, they can hear through the stone some of what the goblins are saying, so they've learned a little bit about them. The first of my terrible jokes. This is the Cockney police inspector. This is out of BBC television, okay? The Cockney police inspector is interviewing a goblin with 3 heads. And what does the Cockney police inspector say to the goblin with 3 heads? Hello, hello, hello. I love that joke, and I am alone on the planet of love. Anyway. Now we have in our cast of characters here a very young fellow who works underground with his father, chiseling out treasure, whatever they're after. So he's underage. That would make him a minor. So, there's no explaining taste. The miners go off to work every day. The young man goes with them. This is not just a way of life, this is symbolic. This is those who would look into the dark places for treasure. The father says, you know, young man, it's a good thing that you've learned this secret about the rhyming and the singing. It won't always work. It's kind of the sage advice that parents have to tell you. It'll work if the gremlins, the goblins, are relatively calm. If they're riled up about something or they really are determined and want something, you'll need better tools than that. We will see in the course of the story whether he figures out any better tools. But Curdy volunteers to work extra hours into the night. Most of the miners don't want to do that because that's when the goblins work, and they don't want to run across the goblins. Curdy's going to take a chance. He needs the extra money. The Christmas is coming up. He wants to get his mother something warm, some warm clothing of some kind, because they're not very well off and it's going to be cold. So it's his family duty and love that has him taking this risky shift into the night on his own, because there aren't other miners around at that time. And sure enough, he starts hearing the goblins going on about their plots. Their plots. They hate the Sun People. They have been banished, essentially. They were the marginalized population, and through the draconian action of the ruling class, they ended up out there in the dark and making their life. There is a goblin king, there's a whole society down there, and their main point in life is to hate the people that live up in the sun. They used to live up here. They used to be more or less like us, with faces and daytime jobs and things. And so they had this plot that they're going to flood the day people somehow. They can do that. They can make shafts and things, channel some river water somehow, and then become the kings and rulers of the upper world. Irene, meanwhile, oh, there is a horrible joke down here. I am compelled, if I've written it down, to share it with you. Don't ever get behind on your payments to your exorcist. You run the risk of being repossessed. Yes, the groaning helps. It unfortunately encourages me. Any response? Irene keeps visiting this old woman, or is she dreaming? Or, well, she's 200 years old, or is she a phantom or a spirit of some kind? We don't know. I do have an announcement to make at this point in the service that the Ghost Unitarian meeting has announced this month's discussion topic, do humans really exist? Anyway, one night when Irene is sleeping not too well, she's frightened by some sound and comes out and looks outside, and it's a cat. It's just a cat. So she realizes it's not goblins. She thinks for a moment it is, but no. This is the thing that goes bump in the night. You're never sure. Cats can be scary. Cats are part of hell. We don't have any black cats out here. It is very dangerous to be followed by a black cat at certain times of the year, especially if you're a mouse. We do have strange animals in the vicinity, and she is delivered by a gift from her grandmother, who sends a ball of white light. Move a couple slides up, we'll get to the white light there. There's some of the creatures she sees, and there is the rescue. We don't know what this is. It's a little sample of the moon. I do gather from the symbolism that this woman, this old wise sage, is a moon goddess. She is the presence of the sacred and the mystery in the story. And our young protagonist has made some kind of alliance just out of curiosity. Curiosity can be a good thing. One of the gifts that the grandmother gives Irene is a thread that no one else can see, but she can feel it. She can sort of see it, and she can definitely feel it. Others can't feel it, and she starts to follow this, and she follows it downward. She doesn't know why, but she has this intuition that she should follow the thread, and it becomes going down and down. She's going into the mine. She's never been inside the mountain before, but she trusts her grandmother, great-grandmother, and she follows this, and then she starts hearing muffled sounds, which sounds like Curdy, the miner, the young fellow who had rescued Luti and herself from their fears. And she hears it through the stones and starts, the thread seems to go down through the stones as if she should follow it, but there are stones in the way. So she starts moving them, smaller ones at first, and then she finds the strength to move some big ones. And then there's a big slab, but Curdy is under that and manages to push it away. He had, in fact, been caught by the goblins, overhearing their plans and all. They realized he was there, and he caught them. But before he was trapped, he had learned a secret about them. Not only are they afraid of rhymes and singing, but they have incredibly delicate feet. You can't hit them in the head. They got heads as rock as stone. If you try to prize fight with them, your hands would get smashed. But step on their feet and you got them. There is sometimes in these stories some little secret or some special skill or some magical tool, something that you learn along the way, telling us it's a good thing to learn things. Pay attention, you might need to know things. Now, rescued by the maiden, notice that the hero did not rescue the maiden this time, she did that. He comes up and tries to warn the Sun People, of whom he's a member. He's got parents and a job and a life upstairs, but he's a bridging figure. He's whatever works for you to go into the secret places. It's called a psychopomp. It is a courier who can travel back and forth. Now he's got valuable information from listening up down below that there's going to be a flood, there's going to be an attack. He tries to warn the king's guards. They shoot him. They see him in the shadows. He's going toward them, trying to warn them of this danger. They don't believe him. They don't see that they don't never, who the heck are you? You're some young miner. How would you know? He's not taken seriously. He, by the way, didn't trust Irene when she tried to explain the thread to him. He couldn't see it, but she follows it to get them out of the cave when she's rescued him. So there's all kinds of not believing. This is not understanding our emotional life. This is not understanding the unconscious. It's not studying the mystery seriously enough. I don't know. Different varies from seeker to seeker, but there's a whole challenge in the story of what will we believe? Why are we so reluctant? People who otherwise are trustworthy are trying to tell us things, and we're not paying attention, and now we're wounded. I'm saying we because I just identify with all the characters in the story when I'm reading it, and I think it's meant to be that way. The whole thing comes out of somebody's head, and one reader at a time is taking it all in. So we're Curdy, and we're Irene, and we're Luti, and we're the absent king, and maybe we're the gremlins too, so there's a lot to sort out here. Oh, Curdy dreams of this grandmother. Eileen had tried to introduce them. He'd taken them upstairs, and all he saw was a dusty attic room. He didn't see all of these beautiful objects she had and the glowing silver ball that floated through the room and the white pigeon that would visit at the window and all these things that were part of the grandmother's life. He saw nothing, and he thought, why are you telling me make up stuff? Why are you lying to me? And he didn't understand that she was able to see all that. But now he had a dream and it healed his wound. So he's starting to shift a little in his interest in these magical things. The story has a big wrap up. The floods do come, and Curdy manages to wrangle the horses and rescue people and rescue the girl. This time they take turns. And the king, in gratitude, offers him a plum job. He said, I would like you to be in charge of my guard. I'd like you to be my personal bodyguard. It sort of gives him be my general, gives him a prominent job for a very young person. He said, no, I'm a miner. I want to stay with my life. But I've been distracted. I had these extra hours. I was going to buy some warm clothing for my mother. And so he gets a reward, fancy clothing, very warm, from the king's closets and things, so that his mother still gets the present. So that's the story. Oh, he gets a kiss too at the end. Why do this? Why ponder a story? Aren't these for children? Well, this is a young adult novel, yes. It was aimed at children, but they weren't originally. And the source material, the Native American versions, aren't children's stories at all. Well, first of all, it's an excuse to tell a lot of monster jokes. I already confessed to that. How do you know if a cannibal likes someone? They ask for seconds. You know you're too old for Halloween when you ask for high fiber candy. You know you're too old for Halloween when somebody says, ooh, scary mask, and you're not wearing a mask. Okay. Seriously, the anomalous stories, the stories about weird stuff, about ghosts and goblins and monsters and strange things, are trying to tell us about something. They're trying to tell us that our focus is too narrow, that we're focused on the tasks at hand. I'm touching something to say, we're focused on the practical, the tangible, the visible, the obvious. And there's a lot to do in the obvious world. And they're saying there's more to that than that. There's something in these old wisdom tales. There's something in the dreams. There's something in imagination that is about something important too. It takes a different kind of consciousness to appreciate it, to get its treasures, but they're worth seeking. And if they come to you in a story or a dream, pay attention. Something valuable is happening. This is inside and outside at the same time. This is me, the dreamer, and not me at the same time. And in that marginal space, in that in-between place, that threshold reality, there are treasures to be found. We sometimes repress mystery and risk losing our own gravitas. A certain seriousness about the human experience can get lost in our doubting. And the other thing in this story is that the goblins are very disfigured. The way the adventure ends is that the flood that they plan does ruin that castle, and Irene, with her father's guidance, is moved back to the main castle, so no great loss. But some of the water gets mischanneled and ends up flowing through the goblin part of the mind, and many of the goblins die. There's a sad part of the story. And others have to move out of the mines because they're flooded now, which means they are forced to live in the sun world. They're forced to deal with humans. And they decide, well, we used to get along years ago before you were so bad to us, let's make up. And they actually become good citizens and end up good neighbors. Happy ending in a way. Let's take that psychologically. Some of our fears get washed away. Good. But not all of this reality is eradicated. Some of it is brought back into life and becomes part of us, part of our daily routine. Useful, actually. They know a few things that we don't already know. That means the story is saying we will need to embrace that which we have rejected. We will need to find a way to get along with the part of ourselves that we thought was disfigured, the part that did not seem appealing, the part that seemed like an enemy within. I will end with a quote from Arthur Miller about this theme from one of his plays, about a character who's having dreams, very troubling dreams. The same dream returned each night until I dared not go to sleep and grew quite ill. I dreamed I had a child, and even in the dream, I saw it was my life, and it was an idiot, and I ran away. But it always crept onto my lap again, clutched at my clothes, until I thought, if I could kiss it, whatever in it was my own. If I could kiss it, perhaps I could sleep. And I bent to its broken face, and it was horrible. And I kissed it. I think one must finally take one's life into one's arms. And so it is. Namaste.